He started his career at Bottega Veneta, where he quickly rose the ranks to head designer. After Bottega Veneta, he went to work for Gucci under the then designer Tom Ford. After that, he started his own label in 2003, and since then has dressed a slew of celebrities, from Angelina Jolie to Sarah Jessica Parker, Solange Knowles, Victoria Beckham, to mention a few. Please welcome, with a big round of applause, Mr. Giles Deacon.
How are we? All good? Thank you for coming along today. It's a real pleasure to be in Lagos, my very first time to Western Africa. So we've had a great couple of days, all thanks to GTBank, who I think have put on the most phenomenal events weekend for everybody. And I think I'm hoping that after all of the talks, masterclasses, and the shows, that people are going to go away feeling inspired and, you know, wanting to get on and do lots of fantastic creative things in the world, which is what we're all here for. So I thought I'd be here today and talk to you about some of my experiences in the fashion industry as a designer, as a creative director, and running your own business, because I know that there's a lot of people here who are doing that and working out ways in which they can carry on doing that, you know, and expanding their careers. So I'll start with the beginning and give you a bit of an insight into my personal background. I was born in the north of England into a non-creative family. My mother, I think the most creative thing she did was flower arranging on a Sunday, which I would go and help her with. My father worked in agriculture, so, you know, really not jazzy background at all from that respect. I lived in the middle of nowhere. The nearest house was 3 miles away. So after every day at school, holidays, weekends, I was outside just running around in nature, collecting things, and most importantly, drawing. And it was, I think, at this point that my kind of possible future of working in a creative industry started. That thing of just having that hand-to-eye world of collecting, thinking about things, looking at nature in all of its fantastic forms was something that I think has definitely gone on to inspire me in many, many ways down the line in my career. I was terrible at school. Got thrown out of nearly every class imaginable, from biology, even out of art I was thrown out of for hitting my art teacher over the head with a shoe. So I wasn't bad, but it was, you know, kind of vaguely bad. And I failed my O-levels, and so I think I got an E in one A-level, which basically means nothing, you're going nowhere. So I was really confused as to what to do, and a friend of my mother's suggested that I go and do an art foundation course. So I thought, Christ, I've got nothing I can show them. What am I going to do? So I borrowed some things off some friends, got some drawings done, found some of my old sketchbooks when I was a kid, and just got this suitcase full of stuff. There was like a tapestry owl, all sorts of funny things in there, and went down to called up the local art foundation class, and the term had already started, and the Tony Gell, the head tutor there, had 2 spaces left from people who hadn't turned up. And he just looked at everything and said, "You're a complete wild card. I like what you've got here. Come on." I started the Art Foundation, and I just loved it. I loved doing the fashion sector of the course the most. And by the Christmas time, I developed my portfolio to the degree in which that they felt it was appropriate that I could apply to St. Martin's School of Art, which, as we all know, is one of the most forefront art colleges in the world. I very luckily got on there, and it was there, from moving from the countryside in north of England, moving into London in the late 80s, when there was all the most fantastic club scene, incredible art scene, music, film, and just totally immersed myself in that. And at that time, St. Martin's was right in the middle of London, so you could walk out and just go from sex shops to the British Museum to gigs, you name it. Everything was there right in front of you. It still is a fantastic college, but at that time was a real gold, I think. And on graduation from St Martin's, I was very luckily asked to go and have an interview with, this time, a man that no one had really heard of. He'd just left Ralph Lauren to go and work for Gucci when Maurizio Gucci, the then owner, was still alive. And this man was Tom Ford. And Tom saw my portfolio, said, yeah, great, I'd love you to do some work. I did lots of prediction work and research work for them. I did that for about a year and a half, and then that wasn't really expanding into a full-time job for me. So I wondered what to do. So I thought, all right, I'll go and have a look around getting a job in Paris. And just to kind of remind you of all of this is all before the internet. This was at a time when you go to Paris, you took your portfolio, you left your portfolio with the Bureau de Style, and the chef de style would come and see it. You get a call back to come and pick it up, and if you were lucky, you were then taken in to have an interview where you could possibly become a stagiaire, an intern, basically, all unpaid. And I tried Chanel, nothing happening there. Tried a couple of other places, nothing. And then I got a return to a great place, this designer called Jean-Charles de Castelbajac, who is kind of like the French Vivienne Westwood, of a better term. And I was thrown into doing, my first job for him was to look after all the Asian licenses. So I was looking after umbrellas, pencil cases, handbags, you name it. And the experience of that was incredible because you were working with Japanese license companies, and like one time I forgot to put the specs on the drawing that was sent to them, and it was a handbag this big, and it actually came back made that size, which was quite phenomenal. So I did that for a few years, then wanted to move back to London. And this was at a time when London was really having a really interesting creative time. It was the time when Dazed and Confused magazine was being launched. A good friend of mine from St Martin's, a lady called Katie Grand, who's the editor of Love magazine, she was the fashion director there. And it was a real kind of melting pot of everybody from all the colleges, people who ran clubs, people who had bands, photographers, journalists, you name it, everybody in a kind of, a quite brilliant scene, which lasted for a long time. And I think it was something that was touched upon yesterday by Vanessa, was that thinking about all your kinds of contemporaries in lots of different artistic spheres and creative spheres that you know, and working with them and working together is really, really important. To have a very healthy competitiveness. There's no need for a kind of nasty bitchiness between people, I don't think. The best things are done when it's all very, constructive and creatively competitive. That's the way, you can really make a force of what your world is about in good numbers of people. So that all was super. London was really kicking along well. And then I got the opportunity to be the creative director of Bottega Venator, which at this point was owned by a private couple, Mr. and Mrs. Moltedo, who had spent most of their 70s flying between Venice and Manhattan. And they were really at a bit of losing end of their tether as to where the company was at that point of time. It had a huge success and was kind of fallen off the map a little bit. And they enlisted myself, Katie Grand, and Stuart Vivers, who's now the creative director at Coach in New York, to come in and kind of reinvigorate it. And we were totally out of our depth. But we had the most incredible experience of learning what to do within all of that period of time. It was really quite phenomenal. Let me just find a slide of that. Some of you may remember this was 1998, 99, and there was the wonderful model Amira, and, oh, not that one. And then, so that was the last, that was the last collection that we did for them. And at this time, Tom Ford and his then CEO, financial guy, Domenico De Sole, came in to wanting to buy Bottega Veneta. And it was the first time that I'd ever been in the middle of a hostile takeover. Tom wanted to turn it into something else, and so I got fired and then employed by him to go and work at Gucci. So I did that for a couple of years again, so working for Tom like 10 years later. And then I kind of decided I really wanted to, I'd always wanted to do my own label, but I'd wanted to get experience out in the world, so working in Paris, but in New York, and in Milan, and to see how all sorts of other places worked. So I felt it was like the right time, and we decided to launch the collection in London. And London at that time was not having a brilliant time. This is when Lee McQueen had gone to Paris, Stella McCartney had changed Chalayan, and London was kind of a bit down on its luck in lots of ways. So we thought it was a really good time to launch the collection. And I pulled in as many favours as I could from people I'd known and worked with before, and launched the collection in 2003-4. And it was in this wonderful old venue of the Chelsea Royal Hospital. And I really love history. It's one of those things that I'm incredibly passionate about. And putting on shows that give great sense of atmosphere and storytelling and theatre, and really fire the imagination in thoughts of really pushing you into kind of other thoughts of fantastical worlds. That's the kind of thing that really gets me going. So we had great girls like Nadia Rauman, some of the supermodels who'd never walked in London catwalks altogether. And the result of that was that the next day I had the front cover of Women's Wear Daily, and the front cover of the New York Times, and the front cover of The Sun. So that is 3 newspapers in the UK covering so many, and the States covering so many different spectrums, was really, really interesting. So we've got some examples of some of the pieces from the collections there. Again, on the picture of Linda Evangelista on the far right, very nature-inspired. Those were some prints that I worked on that were all based on traditional marquetry technique, inlaying of lots of different pieces of wood, but got all sorts of different imagery from kind of bees and chimpanzees and all sorts of animals that I felt were really interesting to go in there. Then moved on a few years further down the line, and we did this show in 2009. And this is just to give you a bit of insight into some of the kind of references from a design process of how I like to work. I don't like things where it's just like, oh, it's inspired by a holiday or something like that. It has to be much more personal. And I think that that's something for everybody to think about when they're doing their research and design work, is to think about things that are really personal to you and things that matter to you. Regardless of how irrelevant it seems, think of those, because it's those things that really make you special, and it's those things that are going to make you stand out, and it's going to be those things that make people want to come and be interested in what you are saying and what you do and what you represent. And this was one all about kind of S&M warfare. So we had big prints with cock rings and big kind of these big heavy black pleated dresses with lots of kind of spears and skeletons and all sorts of kind of quite dark imagery in there, but to make these really beautiful pieces around it. And the dress at the bottom, second along, was inspired by a car wash in London. You know, when car washes start going like that and it spin up. So that dress, when it moved, spun round, and it just creates the most extraordinary shape. And where we go? Moving on, there we go. And the dress was then shot by Tim Walker, the very famous fashion photographer who's just done the incredible Pirelli calendar, which is showcased in New York last week, for the V&A Museum. Let's move along. So some other examples of collaborations with Stephen Jones, the milliner. I really believe in kind of working together, as I say, in artistic collaborations. I get an awful lot out of them, and I think you get really good kind of new insights into things and different ways of working, which I think as a creative person is incredibly important to see how different people do things. There was some outsized knitwear that we did, which was it ended up being in the December issue. The September issue has, of course, become the new September issue of American Vogue. And then a favourite of mine, the Pac-Man Collection. Again, a kind of very irreverent kind of starting point to the collections. But I just loved Pac-Man and thought it'd be great to kind of extrapolate it all and see how far out it could be taken into a design context. And then, back again, oh God, it's very quick, this machine, sorry. And then the piece on the far right, that was made with 167,000 hand-embroidered crystals, Swarovski crystals on it there. And it was at this time that I think the kind of way in which that I wanted to push my work into being involved in couture really started. I was getting very, feeling that this was a really interesting direction for us to go in. Move on again. And this Burn collection also, and going back to the stories telling of everything, this was about a really beautiful house in the countryside. It could be anywhere in the world. And it was about you waking up in the middle of the night in winter and the whole house is on fire. And you've got to find all your favorite things that you want to take out. And for instance, you're grabbing some tapestries, some personal artifacts, a whole host of things that were special and important to you. And then running out into like a frozen garden. So we had this transition from all these kind of burnt imagery and hot flames going into this kind of very kind of austere, sort of glacial kind of world. And the contrast worked exceptionally well, I think. And here's some behind-the-scenes shots of the pieces. So the dress on the top, that was all constructed out of probably about 300-400 meters of hand-cut strips of satin organza and chiffon, and then all hand-burnt with like a creme brulee cooking torch. So a very couture technique of a modern world put into making that piece. And then you can see in the studio we always have a bit of fun making some back and forth, making some pieces. So the girl is resting her elbow on a giant cigarette, which we've got some quite good photos where we're joking about burning the holes with this big cigarette. And then this was one piece from that collection that we made for Victoria Beckham at the Olympics. The Spice Girls did a song there, and they all went round quite unusually on the top of some taxis. Don't know if anybody remembers that. And this was a real favourite of mine. This was a Swan Collection, again working with Stephen Jones, who I've worked with for a long, long time. And he created these most extraordinary headpieces. And I just loved the way that they moved. And this work of ostrich feathers, it has this very kind of luxe feeling. And again, this is it's a kind of indication of where we're moving on to into the world of couture. I really believe in drawing a lot as well. I know it's not for everyone, but I think the more you draw, the better your design work really is. It's by far the best way to get your ideas over to the people who you work with from in your mind to 2D to make them into 3D. Well, we'll move on from these. We've got some nice pieces to see. So these are actually some pieces from the Couture collection that we did in Paris in last February. So we've got, you can see how the workmanship is working on here. The piece on the far end is all made from laser cut circles, which are all cut into these rather beautiful concentric shapes, all hand applied, and it's light as a feather, that dress on the far left. And then the second one in is a hand curled satin oysters and pearls with a miniature pearl embroidered into them with marabou feathers and on a corset base. The third dress along is a cocktail dress with marabou feathers and the same technique. The red dress is a pearl and Tironi satin, all hand applied and hand manipulated, which was incredibly complex to make. One of my favourite pieces. And then the jacquard dress here is one that was designed from some drawings that I'd done of some flowers with some embroideries on the cuffs. So they give a good idea of kind of where the work and technique can come to. So I don't know if the girls want to have one walk around again, but I think they all look fantastic, these girls. Yeah, thank you. I'll go back to the slideshow for a little while. This was a project that I did with the British Olympic Council, and it was called Britain Creates. and it was where a series of designers and artists were linked up, and this was done with a very dear friend of mine, Jeremy Deller, who's a fantastic artist, and this was inspired by William Morris and some athletic runners, and we built this whole kind of idea of this kind of like shamanistic sort of tribal feel for this sort of paganistic feel for on top of the studio. And then what else have we got? Here we go to some celebrities, which I know is an important part of everyone's business and world and imagery. These were some dresses from autumn-winter 2015, and we were very lucky to dress Kate Blanchett at the Cannes Film Festival, and that dress was voted as the second best dress at Cannes Festival all time, after Grace Kelly, which is no bad thing to have. It's a very lovely thing. And but lovely Solange wore this piece we made for to the Met, though Solange was a little bit naughty because that dress, as you can see with Anna Cleveland wearing it in the middle, has quite a train to it. And when it got sent back, I was like, this looks like something's happened to this. And I inquired what had happened, and she decided she didn't like the train and had cut it off, and without asking. And when I politely went mad, wanting to find out what had happened to it, they then found out that a maid in the hotel had thrown it away. So, but she's been forgiven. We'll dress her again, but it was not a good look at all. That goes with the territory. And that's just some drawings and some bits and bobs, some studio work. I photograph everything very, very in depth and keep a really big archive, which I think is really important for all the designers here to do all of this. I think a really great thing is when you start out, you often think, God, this seems a bit weird. I'm really collecting and putting my own work and drawings in, is my ego this out of control? But it's not. It's really, really important to do that, because you can go back to it time after time, and often things that you thought were totally irrelevant, you'll go and think, oh my God, that was a really good idea. That's really inspiring. Or that would be great to work with that. And that kind of cross-referencing really enables you to build a really solid body of work over a period of time. And then we go, and this is the couture. Oh, sorry, no, that's it. This was the lookbook that we did for the couture in Paris. So we've got exquisite tailoring. All the fabrics are designed in-house. Nothing is bought off the shelf as such, all the jacquards. I try to be as sustainable as possible. I work with as many local mills as I can, and really just try. The great thing about couture is that you're only making one piece. So it's, from that aspect, it's extremely sustainable. You carry no stock and no inventory. Some more examples of, and the company at the bottom who I worked with to create those jacquards, they make all the kind of embassy coverings of kind of fabric walls all the world over, and they've been going since the 1700s. Again, some of the pieces which you saw here. This is when the girls were meant to be coming out, just to give it some coherency.
Have the girls come out one more time.
Yeah, do you want to see them come out one more time?
Yeah.
If they've not got changed.
No.
Cue the girls. Here we go.
Okay.
Here we go. I won't start singing. We could have got some music for this, couldn't we? I quite like the silence, though. It gives it quite a... You're doing well, girls. You're looking very, very couture and confident there. So there we go. Oh, and there's some more pieces from the couture. And then I have to finish with this one up here. In April this year, it's the September before, we were commissioned to do Pippa Middleton's wedding dress, and which is a great thing to do. And we worked on that in secret for 7 or 8 months, signing 1 million NDAs, possibly lots of things I shouldn't really be talking about today. But one thing, it was an absolute treat to work on, and I was very, very pleased how it came out in the end, because it was one of those things that I'd never really weirdly thought about at the time. And then I just woke up really early the day after, and I thought, oh hell, this is obviously going to go out to every single newspaper, publication, digital, you name it, in the world. What if everybody hates it? And so those things do go through your head naturally. And I was very, very thankful that the next day I got some text messages from something in Australia, pictures coming through, and I think we literally had the front cover of every single newspaper in the world on that Sunday, which was no mean feat at all. But so that's kind of where we've got to really so far. That's where me from very humble beginnings to ending up showing in Paris on the Couture schedule there, and making always trying to make beautiful things that enhance people's worlds and lives, and making the creative process as interesting and exciting as possible. I think it's a small thing in the world to do, but it's an important thing. So thank you very much. Thanks, girls. Oh, walking around again. Can't get them off now. Anybody? Da-da-da. Well done. So, Nicole, questions, the dreaded questions.
Most of the wedding gowns we have now, is it out of creativity or thinking out of the box that we do have them in couture cuts instead of the traditional conservative ball gown idea?
Yeah, I mean, it's always goes down to whenever we work on a wedding dress, we work through a consultation process with the client, and you get to know them. And I have a kind of a mental questionnaire which I go through with them about what do you love, what do you hate. And you soon get, what's your lifestyle like? What do you want? Lots of a wedding. Are you going to be doing lots of dancing? Do you, is it on a beach? Is it up a mountain? Is it, is it in a private property? Where is it? And you get a good idea of what someone's looking for, because I think, yes, everything I think should look inherently modern. That everybody wants to look contemporary, and from a design perspective, I think within the bridal business, it should be, have a very relevant design perspective to it. But at the same time, if you want to do a great big ball gown with an enormous big train, there's a gorgeous way of doing that. So there is ways around it all, but I think the general kind of mood as such is to go with a kind of something that's very feminine, very flattering, but has beautiful work to it, in like embroideries or specific laces being made. All these things make them very, very special.
My name is Precious, and I wanted to ask this question in the last class, but there was no time, but I know you could help. In Nigeria, because I'm in Nigeria, so I noticed that people that are into fashion business, some of them, they get close to the celebrities, and with that, their business is moving.
Yeah.
But someone like me, that I don't even have a celebrity around me, how can I get to link myself up with them, or how can I promote myself? Because people around me, they'll be like, we can't pay the price you are giving us. Who are you? It's not that maybe you have this big fashion house, we can't pay up to that. Well, we notice that people that are already in the business, that are big already, they are making it more, they are making it big because people pay them well. But we've not climbed up to that level, we don't even have enough money to establish ourselves very well. How can we promote ourselves? I mean, how can we make our clients to pay up more?
Well,
that will help us too.
Well, I think the important thing is that everything takes time. there's no easy way of making it quick and big in the fashion industry as a designer. And I think the important thing to do is that you have a very recognizable style and a certain quality of work that will attract the clients that you're wanting to work with. So they see and perceive you to be something that they want to invest their money in. And I think that really comes from doing the right work and the right designs, you know, to those and then that will get to those customers who will then appreciate what you do, and then it can be very word of mouth. There's also, as we all know, the very wonderful world of social media to push things through. But don't underestimate the word of mouth within a private client context.
Okay, I saw some of your sketches.
Yeah.
And I know you didn't start like one day and you started sketching. So I wanted to ask, was it a natural ability or you learned it?
I think it was partially because I drew always as a child, but they were not like fashion drawings or anything like that. I used to draw hedgehogs and dogs and God knows whatever. But it was when I was at St. Martin's that I really, really got into drawing and doing lots of life drawing. And I used to go to life drawing classes every day. And it was that really got you to understand how the body works, how different bodies work, how clothes fall and drape on people, and you get a really good understanding. And I really think time is never on anyone's side, but to do a drawing every day and as much as possible, it really keeps you in. It's that hand-eye coordination is incredibly important.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the class. I have 3 questions.
Okay, 3?
Yes.
You're not holding back, are you?
As an upcoming illustrator, what are the necessary skills that we need to acquire, and how do we acquire them?
Become an illustrator? Upcoming illustrator.
What skills do we need?
What skills do you need? Well,
yes.
You have to have a gorgeous technique. And a style that is uniquely yours, that is no one else's, and one that you have really thought about, and you maybe use lots of color, lots of gorgeous line, and get something that you feel inspired about when you look at. You want to be like, wow, I love that.
And how do we acquire them? Like,
how do you acquire those?
How do we acquire?
Yeah, well, this is the tricky thing about having skills. I think a good way is to look at lots of past and present illustrators and illustrations that you like, and there's maybe a sort of style that you gravitate towards or inspired by. That can really help. Or I don't know, I'm always inspired by, kind of nature and people. They're my 2 things that I go to when I'm drawing. So if I'm sat in an airport or in a hotel, I'll sit and draw away while I'm waiting for someone. Or if I'm in the countryside, I'll sit and draw some flowers and plants. And those can lead into the most extraordinary places. And then you can drop people into those backdrops, or plants can come in front of the people, and all of these things. So find some things that interest you. You might be interested in, I don't know, broken down cars, for instance, I don't know. But, they're great things to draw, and then draw some gorgeous girls, all around them. I think inventing a world is really good as well.
Okay. The second question is...
Sorry, just your mouth.
The second question is, what are the necessary tools to be used in getting a well-defined illustration?
What
are the necessary tools?
The tools?
Oh
my God, I think the best is pencil and paper. It doesn't really get better than that. It's if you get on well with that, you can get on well with anything.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the class.
That's okay.
My question is, when you're designing, do you consider the kind of fabrics? Do you have background knowledge about fabrics, how they drape?
Yeah.
And the kind of, as some customers, they might ask for design that things, you have a design that they say, use this fabric, and this fabric won't work. So how does that affect your work, the kind of materials you work with, and how you can merge that with your design?
Well, I love textiles. I love print, and I love color. So all the fabrics that I use will be digitally printed or screen printed, can be from satin organzas to, you name it, across the gamut of fabrics. And when I'm working with a particular client, I always make sure that whatever the style that we're working on is going to work for them. And it's no use if someone says, oh, I want a stretch satin, and it's not going to work. You just have to be really honest with them and give options that are going to work and explain why. That's the best way to do it. But also people are coming to you as much as you are going to design and work with them to get the best thing for them, they're wanting your opinion and your knowledge and fair expertise. So I think it's fair to impart that upon them.
Hello.
Hello.
My question is, what are your thoughts on the couture process and products nowadays? Because recently we've been seeing couture collections that are increasingly becoming commercial. Is it seasonal trends or probably the direction in which and craftsmanship is headed?
So I think he's asking just nowadays, couture is becoming a little bit more commercial.
Right.
So he's asking why that is.
No, well, I think it is. But I don't think in any way it's become commercially boring. I think that the sales of couture are up by 700% worldwide at the moment. And that's a great thing. It enables businesses to work, it enables us to make beautiful things, work with incredible embroiderers, developers, technicians, and I think couture is always about a certain subtlety, and it's a very personal thing as well. And I think that I like things that can have a character of their own. Each design has got a story to it. That's very important. They don't have to be particularly outlandish designs. Some clients really want that, in which case, great, you've got free rein to go crazy with them. We have a client who lives in Shanghai, and she buys off many 5 or 6, but she buys probably 5 or 6 pieces of us a season, and they are the most bonkers pieces you can possibly imagine, in the most brilliant way, and she wears them solely for dinner with her husband every evening. She never wears them out. Yeah, so it's that kind of extraordinary world that you're working in.
Sorry, guys, we've run out of time, but thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks so much.